My name is Evan Miller, and I was 31 years old when my own mother decided to turn me into a joke at the dinner table. If you had met me back then, you probably wouldn't have noticed anything special. I wasn't loud. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself much either. I had learned early in life that silence was safer. That night, the dinner was supposed to be simple. Just family. My mother, Linda, my stepfather, Robert, my younger sister, Claire, her husband, and me. A regular Sunday dinner in our suburban Ohio home. The food smelled good. Roast chicken, mashed potatoes. The kind of meal meant to feel warm. But warmth was never really on the menu when my mother was around. We had barely sat down when she started. "So," she said loudly, swirling her wine glass, "Claire just got promoted again." Everyone clapped politely. Then she looked straight at me. "And Evan, well, Evan is still finding himself." She laughed. Not a nervous laugh. A confident one. Robert chuckled. Claire avoided my eyes. I felt my face heat up, but I stayed quiet. My mother wasn't done. 31 years old, she continued, shaking her head, and still renting, still no family, still no real career. Honestly, Evan, sometimes I wonder what I did wrong. The table went silent. I stared at my plate. Then she leaned forward and delivered the line that would change everything. At least Claire turned out useful. Useful. The word hung in the air like smoke. Everyone heard it. No one stopped her. I smiled faintly, the kind of smile you wear when you've learned that reacting only makes things worse. Dinner continued, as if nothing had happened. But inside me, something shifted. That night, I packed a small bag. Not because I was angry, but because I was finally done. Part 2, what she never knew. Here's the part my mother never understood. I wasn't failing. I was preparing. For years, I had quietly built something she never cared enough to ask about. While she mocked my boring desk job, I had been working as a silent partner and systems architect for a logistics tech startup based in Chicago. I wasn't the face. I wasn't the loud one. I owned 48%. And the house we lived in, the one my mother constantly reminded me was hers. It was. Not really. The deed was under my name. She had convinced herself she owned everything because she had controlled everything. But legally, I did. That night, I didn't confront her. I simply left. I stayed at a hotel. And I made one phone call. To my lawyer. "Activate the transfer," I said calmly. He paused. "Are you sure?" "Yes." By morning, everything changed. Part 3, the morning after. The next morning, my phone buzzed nonstop. Missed calls. Texts. Voicemails. From my mother. From Robert. From Claire. I didn't answer. At 9:12 a.m., my lawyer sent me one message. Completed. By noon. The house ownership reverted fully to me. All shared accounts were frozen. The business investment my mother bragged about, pulled. Her access to my assets, gone. At 1:47 p.m., she showed up at my office. Unannounced. She looked smaller. Her confidence had evaporated. "What did you do?" she demanded. I stood slowly. And for the first time in my life, I didn't shrink. "I protected what was mine," I said. She scoffed nervously. "You're being dramatic." "No," I replied quietly. "I'm being finished." She tried guilt. Then anger. Then tears. None of it worked. Because humiliation only has power when you still seek approval. And I didn't anymore. As she walked out, she turned back one last time. "You think you've won." I didn't answer. Because winning was never the point. Peace was. For the first few weeks after everything happened, my life became strangely quiet. No insults. No sarcastic comments. No reminders of how useful everyone else was compared to me. Just silence. And for the first time, that silence felt peaceful. I moved into a small, modern apartment downtown. Nothing flashy. Clean lines, large windows. A place that felt like mine, not something I had to justify to anyone. Work continued as usual. The startup was growing fast. Contracts, expansion talks, long meetings. I was finally stepping into visibility, not because I wanted revenge, but because it was time. Meanwhile, my family was unraveling. I didn't hear it directly at first. But word travels. My mother had told everyone for years that she owned everything, that I was just living under her roof, that I owed her my entire existence. Now people were asking questions. Why had the house suddenly changed hands? Why were accounts frozen? Why did Robert's small consulting business suddenly lose its silent funding? The truth started leaking out slowly, painfully. And my mother didn't handle it well. Her fall from control. She tried to save face. She told relatives I had manipulated paperwork, that I had turned against my own family. That success had corrupted me. But lies collapse when facts stand still. The deed had always been in my name. The investments had always been mine. The money had always come from my work. All she had owned was the narrative. And she had abused it. One afternoon, Claire called me. She hadn't spoken to me since the dinner. "Evan, can we talk?" she asked quietly. I almost said no. But something in her voice sounded different, less confident, less protected. So I agreed. The sister who stayed silent. We met at a coffee shop, halfway between our places. Claire looked tired, not just physically, emotionally. "I didn't know," she said after a long pause. "I swear, I didn't know she treated you like that for so long." I smiled faintly. "You sat at the table," I replied calmly. "You heard her." She looked down. "I know," she whispered, "and I hate myself for staying quiet." That was the difference between her and our mother. Regret. "She's not handling this well," Claire said. "She keeps saying you betrayed her." I took a slow breath. "She humiliated me for years," I replied. "All I did was stop allowing it." Claire nodded, eyes glossy. "She wants to talk to you." I shook my head gently. "Not yet." Because forgiveness without accountability is just permission. The night SHE finally broke. 3 months later, I got a knock at my door. It was late. When I opened it, I barely recognized her. My mother stood there, smaller than I remembered. No makeup, no sharp posture, no commanding presence. Just a woman who had lost control. "I don't have anywhere else to go," she said quietly. For a moment, the past tried to rush back in. Every insult. Every comparison. Every dinner table humiliation. But I didn't feel anger. I felt clarity. "I won't let you inside tonight," I said gently. Her eyes filled with tears. "I was hard on you," she whispered, "but I was your mother." "And I was your son," I replied. "And you forgot that." She broke down. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just the quiet kind of crying that comes when there's no one left to impress. "I didn't know you were strong," she said. I looked at her for a long moment. "No," I corrected calmly. "You just didn't care to look." I gave her money for a hotel. I made sure she was safe. But I closed the door. Because boundaries are not cruelty. They are survival. Part 5, Healing is not revenge. People think stories like this end with applause. With shouting. With dramatic confrontations. With someone winning. But real endings are quieter. Healing doesn't look like revenge. It looks like choosing yourself without hatred. Months later, my company signed a major expansion deal. I was finally listed publicly as co-founder. People congratulated me. Some even apologized for believing the old stories. I didn't gloat. I didn't explain. I simply lived. My mother moved to a smaller place. She stopped calling me useless. Eventually, she stopped calling at all. And strangely enough, that hurt less than I expected. Because by then, I no longer needed her approval to breathe. My life didn't suddenly become perfect after my mother lost control. That's something movies lie about. What really happened was slower, heavier, more real. There were mornings I woke up and instinctively waited for criticism that never came. No voice telling me I wasn't enough. No reminder that I owed someone my existence. Just quiet. And in that quiet, old wounds started speaking. The invisible damage. People don't realize how long humiliation lives inside you. Even after the insults stop, your mind keeps repeating them. At meetings, I'd hesitate before speaking, even when I knew the answer. At social events, I'd downplay my success, afraid of being seen. In relationships, I'd over-explain myself, expecting rejection. Years of being called useless had rewired my instincts. So I started therapy. Not because I was broken, but because I wanted to stay whole. My therapist once said something that stayed with me. You weren't weak. You were surviving in a place that punished strength. That sentence changed everything. My mother's version of the story. I didn't speak to my mother for almost a year. But I heard about her. She told people I had turned cold. That money had changed me. That children these days forget sacrifices. What she never mentioned was the dinner table. Or the laughter. Or the way she enjoyed having an audience when she humiliated me. Control looks different when it's questioned. And she hated being questioned. The day the family turned quiet. It happened at my cousin's wedding. I almost didn't go. But Claire convinced me. She's going to be there, she warned. I know, I replied, and I'm okay with that. The reception was elegant. Soft lights, piano music, champagne glasses clinking. I walked in calmly. Heads turned. Not because of drama, but because people finally knew who I was. The same relatives who once ignored me suddenly smiled too wide. The same uncles who compared me to others now asked about my work. And then there she was. My mother. Standing alone. Watching. For the first time in her life, she had no story that worked. When she approached me, the room felt smaller. You look well, she said stiffly. So do you, I replied politely. That was it. No confrontation. No apology. No closure scene. Just two people standing on opposite sides of the truth. And somehow, that hurt her more than anger ever could. Why she really lost everything. It wasn't the money. It wasn't the house. It wasn't the accounts. What my mother truly lost that morning after the dinner was authority. She built her identity on being needed, on being feared, on being obeyed. The moment I stopped shrinking, her power collapsed. People didn't leave her because I took something. They left because they finally saw who she was. My own definition of success. Success used to mean proving her wrong. Now it means something else. It means choosing peace over performance. It means walking away without explaining. It means not repeating the cycle with my own children someday. I still remember that dinner. The fork scraping the plate. The laughter. The heat in my face. But it no longer defines me. Because the next morning didn't just change her life. It gave me mine back. Quiet truth, ending of part 6. Some parents don't raise children. They raise mirrors. And when the mirror finally reflects the truth, they shatter. Not because you broke them, but because they can no longer lie to themselves.